Booyah.
Welcome in. This is the Cuz Ben,
What up?
and I am Michael, and we are continuing our deep dive into the Linkin Park discography.
Episode 2, Reanimation.
That's right. So this album, second album, didn't realize it was a remix album at the time.
Yeah.
Came out in 2001. They recorded it while they were on the tour for Hybrid Theory. Came out in a soft case, which I would say was not a big thing at the time then. Still not a big thing at the time, as we don't really release albums as a physical copy.
Yeah, now they have no CDs at all. You're right, though. It did not come out in that jewel case. It was a slip case. So it was a little different looking right off the bat.
Yeah, and the robot was pretty cool on the front for folks that may remember, or should go back and take a look because it was pretty sweet to have that robot on the front. Do you happen to know who drew that?
I don't, but I know that a lot of their art is made by guys in the band. I know Johan can draw and does some of the stuff. I know even now when they've done the Hybrid Theory re-release, they've released some of their like mock-up drawings and stuff of like, here's how we want the album cover to look. So I know that the band is super involved with it. It's obviously cover of Reanimation. You got that Gundam guy holding the flag, very similar to the soldier guy on Hybrid Theory holding the flag. They both have wings, which is pretty cool. They're like, don't know if they're angels or what the wings necessarily signify, but they certainly got it's cool when the second album or subsequent albums come out and the art kind of matches. Like they kind of got a theme going, a universe going. It's always cool when there's album art that kind of harkens back to other album art or other posters or other whatever, and kind of just gets you more familiar with their logo and all that. So that was a good idea.
Absolutely.
Having the flag and the wings on the soldier again on the record cover. It's different enough to kind of be its own thing while still, it's the sequel. I mean, Reanimation, like you said, when we were younger, we didn't even really realize necessarily that we didn't really know what a remix album was.
Yeah, Meteor is considered the second album.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that Meteor that was the case until fairly recently. I always consider Reanimation the second album. I didn't really know remix albums were a thing. Certainly, different variations of songs come out, but I didn't know full remix albums were considered a thing or even disrupted the order of a discography per se.
Right.
So this was certainly something that happened early on in their careers and was very, very different, but very cool piece of work we got here. Yeah,
I mean, they call them remixes, but they're really basically new pieces of music. I mean, most of them have completely new lyrics. I guess the way they made this is they kind of sent out all the loose miscellaneous tracks for every song, like the guitar track, the drum track, the vocal track. It seems like they just passed them out to kind of random producers or specific producers that they wanted to work with. And then those producers basically just took those sounds and those samples and made a whole new record out of the same recordings, which is amazing. Like they took the same recordings and made 20 new songs out of them, essentially.
Yeah. I know when I first heard it, I don't know that I caught that the track names, they're, of course, if you look at the track listings, they're all kind of spelled out or they're differently in abbreviations, shorthand. So looking at it, you kind of have to distinguish which track is which. And I don't know that I knew that some of the song titles were the same. And so I think once I played it, I'm like, oh, some of this sounds familiar, but very different. Now, obviously, listening to the discography, you probably know a lot of this going through as a first-time listener. But still just a very cool way to do it.
Yeah, they're all written in like leet speak. Like they're all written with numbers and exclamation points and all these different things instead of actual letters. Like Runaway has the @ sign and High Voltage has the exclamation point, all this stuff. I think Prince was kind of the originator of doing that with song titles. He would always like use the number 2 instead of the word 2 and all kinds of stuff like that. Now, obviously, everybody types like this on the internet, and there's all kinds of texting, and yeah.
This album was released July 30th of 2001. So just short of a year from the Hybrid Theory release. And this wasn't... still wasn't big for computers or the internet. The iPod was just released this year. MP3s were not a big thing. This was an album you would have gone to the store to purchase.
Definitely. You still wouldn't be streaming music. The internet wasn't fast enough. Maybe we were at that time, but you wouldn't stream a whole album, man. Like, even when we started buying records on iTunes or whatever it was, it's like it was more like a track at a time. Like, this was like an album, and it felt like there's 20 tracks on here. Some of them are like interludes and crap like that, but it's definitely like a full package. Like, you're supposed to just listen to this thing and take the journey.
Yep. Yes, you are.
Which, it's kind of amazing. It's like somehow this album, it holds together as an album, and all the tracks like sound like they're coming from the same place and the same universe, but every single track is produced by different people. They got different collaborators, different producers, all kinds of different stuff going on. But somehow it hangs, it takes you on that journey more than a lot of albums where every track is made by the same guy.
Yeah, it's a little bit like taking a ride through Disney World when you're on a roller coaster, or not a roller coaster, one of those tracks that goes from room to room, and you get a little bit something different in every room, whether it's
like a dark ride
or something that jumps out at you. And this is just, because of the we'll go through the scratching and the different tracks in that, but it's just a little bit different sound with every room, every track that you enter in. And sometimes you do get the interludes, which are like a little creepy cue as you're on that track and something maybe cues you in that something's going to happen next. So it's just a very cool concept and piece that was, meant to be listened to as a whole. It could certainly be listened to in pieces, but meant to be listened to as a whole. As we said, that was released as an album. You didn't have a lot of MP3s at the time. So that's how folks listened to something like this almost 20 years ago, straight through.
Yeah, this one's coming up on the 20th anniversary next year, 2021. It was included in the Hybrid Theory box set. They've got all the Reanimation stuff included in there, which just further proves the point that this was not album number 2. This was kind of a sidestep, kind of a let's see what we can do with what we've already recorded before we go do completely new ideas. And the fact that they just kind of included it as a little bonus disc in the 20th anniversary and it didn't get its own re-release just kind of drives that home. But, dude, this is my favorite Linkin Park album, and this is one of my favorite albums ever. I know it's one of the albums I have listened to the most.
It's mine as well. It really opened the door to hip-hop for me. Whereas I kind of started in rock music when I was younger, but really opened up hip-hop for me, and certainly for Linkin Park as an artist. To right off the bat, have this as a follow-up to your debut project, to just diversify your portfolio, if you will, musically, to show all the different avenues you have. Of course, if you've listened to our first podcast, we discuss how they're tackling so many different ranges, instrumentally, vocally, what they're able to do. And this just kind of making it a mixtape and a rock and a hip-hop and all kinds of different spaces. Just really opens them up as a musical artist further. And then further down the line with different albums, they still continue to expand in other little pockets. And this just really sets the stage for that. In between, technically, their first and second album, Meteora.
Yeah, it's a piece of art, man. Like, it takes you on that journey. Every sound, every little different sample and vocal performance, it just keeps flowing. It just keeps hitting. The vibe is, it's weird. It's like there's like a melancholiness to it. There's a darkness to it. Obviously, coming from metal, coming from hip hop, there's a lot of darkness and pain and whatever. Like, but it's like a. I'm trying to describe it, man. I'm taking up airtime just hemming and hawing, but it's like a nightmare, but it's like a computerized nightmare. It's definitely creepy. There's definitely some emotions in here that like you can hear this and you don't quite know, what the darkness is that they're kind of describing. Like it's a feeling. It's like a shadow that kind of hangs over it, but you can it's deep stuff. They really conjure a whole realm of different sounds and emotions on this thing.
Yes, they do.
I think a lot more than on some of their stuff too. Like I love like Meteora for instance, but it seems Meteora is like from Earth. Like this is like from the dream dimension or something. Like it's
I think the mixing some of the almost technological sounds on a lot of it. That's the way I always thought of it as
yep,
techie sounds.
definitely.
Really puts a different vibe into it for sure.
Yeah, they went all out. I mean, they had to. They're starting with samples of their first album to create a new album from the pieces. I don't even know how often that's been done. I mean, I'm just glancing at the Wikipedia page. It says this is the 5th best-selling remix album. Blood on the Dance Floor by Michael Jackson's obviously the highest-selling, another great album, but it's not quite like this where they, you know what, the band Olivia Tremor Control kind of does that. They do a bunch of performances and they kind of chop it all up into samples and then kind of create music out of their own samples of them playing random instruments, but it's not like this where they took an album that already existed and took the pieces and made a brand new thing. I can't really think of another example of someone who would even try something like that, honestly, besides Linkin Park.
Yeah, and adding different artists on every track as well to create a unique aspect. Different musicians on every track as well.
We are going to go track by track. We're going to kind of give our overview of the track, kind of discuss some of the different sounds that you might hear, some of the different instrumentation, some of the different lyrical themes, and then we will give our ranking to the song. We'll give it a letter grade, A through F, with S being superior, even higher than an A. I don't know if we gave any really less than passing grades last time. I know there were quite a few A's and B's, obviously, from Hybrid Theory.
I think I gave a couple, maybe a couple C's, but that was about it.
Yeah, that's still pretty good. So, yeah, basically, if it's an S tier, that's kind of like absolute best, like top 10 Linkin Park, period. Like, you're going to put that on your Linkin Park mixtape, Desert Island mixtape, if you could only have 10 Linkin Park songs from throughout the career.
Your greatest hits.
Greatest hits, but more favoritist hits, more the ones that really kind of, because the greatest hits is not always the most artistic or the most meaningful songs necessarily. And we'll see, Linkin Park hasn't actually done a greatest hits as far as I know.
Not that I've found.
So that's a 20-year career without a kind of a cash-in greatest hits album. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Although this is a remix album, so that you could argue it's kind of a cash-in, but I think it's one of their most artistic pieces of music all together. So let's go track by track, listen to some of these, and give our rankings for each song on the album. So track 1, we got the open. It's just called Opening.
Just a little over a minute long.
Mm-hmm.
No vocals.
It's like a violin playing. It's almost the riff from Crawling. It's very similar. It's kind of an interpolation of the riff from Crawling. It's got all the same notes in there. I remember thinking this was very cool when I was younger. I mean, you've got like a rap rock band, and then they just bring it all the way down, like the most chill, beautiful kind of orchestral instrument of the violin, and has nothing to do with metal music for the most part.
I enjoyed the instruments tremendously. It was Dave Farrell, who was the bassist normally, who did the cello and the violin, and that's what this is: cello, violin, piano arrangement. But I enjoyed it tremendously. Growing up as a pianist, same as yourself, and also a cellist. So, but to kind of see a different view of them there than the guitars and the bass, a little bit different setup with the opening here, and also this is, if you didn't hear My December, which was a bonus track on the Chinese version of the original album, this was the first time you'd hear something like this from Linkin Park.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they do have kind of some of those violin samples and sound. It is in there on the first album, but it's so overshadowed just by the crushing guitars. So I mean, and this just shows they're really trying to take you on a journey, man. This is like the whole spectrum of emotions and sounds, and they're not just trying to pummel you with banger after banger. Like they got those little interludes in there, and honestly, that's kind of what kind of holds a lot of this stuff together is some of these interlude tracks and stuff like that.
Yeah, kind of as a transition. So this is a nice opening piece, a nice calm, if you will, for the build up and the big tracks to come.
We are not going to rank the interlude tracks, so this gets a free pass, no grade. So you got track 2, Points of Authority, or as it's Points of Authority, or whatever. No vowels apparently, but great opening track, man. This bangs. This is
great. Yeah.
It's its own style of music, dude. The stutter rhythms, just kind of all the wall of sound, dude. You do not hear this from other types of music. Just all the different sounds hitting you at once is incredible.
Yeah. So it keeps the original lyrics, but doesn't keep any of the original instruments, you could say, because everything is a machine.
I mean, the drums are like super programmed and super tight. Like you can tell it's just chopped up. All these like different sub rhythms hitting each other. They got like stutter rhythms and wobble rhythms, and they're like treating actual drum samples, but it ends up being these insane riffs that you could never play on a real set of drums, and just sounding just so tight and just so alien and weird, but just the way it hits is awesome.
It sounds very mechanical in the background, and it sounds very like sliding up and down, just a mechanical creature almost or something. It's just a weird sound, and almost a little bit Matrixy, if you will. Matrix came out around that time, ironically.
I think you're right.
Not sure if it came out before or after the album, but with kind of technology taking over, and ironically, the name of the song being Points of Authority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got that weird, I don't know if it's like a backwards guitar or just a heavily screwed with guitar that kind of goes throughout in the background, kind of have this little menacing, atmospheric. It just keeps building the tension. Like even as the song kind of evolves on its own, they've just got this really creepy guitar thing that never lets up. Right off the bat, they've got the synth is just insane. The wow, 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 wow. Like, they just hit you over the head with it. And, I mean, this is way before dubstep. But they got some wubs on here. They got some very dirty synthesizer sounds out of, I don't necessarily know what technology they happen to have, but they got it sounding delicious.
Yeah, it's just an excellent way to remix an original song. Like we said, the lyrics are the same, but to just use a completely different sound palette, if you will, as if an artist were to use a different, go from oils to clay, let's say.
Or
a completely
from red.
different palette.
Yeah. Or just going from red to green. I mean, you paint a picture in red, you paint the same picture in green. It's totally different.
Yeah, it's an excellent piece.
The scratching is amazing right off the bat. As soon as Chester comes in, you got the falsetto harmony vocal, like multiple layers of Chester harmonizing with himself. Sounds beautiful. Mike comes in hard on the verse as always.
Yeah, they kind of drop and fade in and out more so than they would as if they were real people standing next to each other recording.
Yeah.
Kind of adding that mechanical feel, like they're just the way that they distorted the sound of them. Just also adds like a mechanical feel to it. Just a very eerie, strange sound.
Yeah, a lot of echoes and a lot of kind of even sampling itself back, kind of repeating. They are not shy about letting you know that it's vocal samples that they're chopping back together.
And sometimes cutting out vocals or just the instrumentation, or cutting out both at the same time. So just doing different ways of doing it on the same track.
Great song, great intro. I don't know if it's better than the original Points of Authority or not, but that is not the question at hand. What letter grade do you give it?
I give it a B+. I love this album a lot, but it's not one of my top ones on this album. So even in the context of this album, I'd give it a B+, I guess, because I like other tracks more.
That's exactly what I was thinking. B+. It's a B+. There's definitely some better stuff on here, but this sets the stage. You get that harmony from Chester. You get a song where it's like, you know the word, you know how it goes, but it's totally you never heard it like this. And we cannot forget to mention the crazy drum stutter breakdown on the bridge. Just an insane. It's basically a drum solo, but they're just adding digital rhythmic elements to a drum sample that already exists, and it's just amazing. Like the way it flips back around back into the chorus, you gotta hear it. That's probably one of the best parts on the album, but I still give it a B+ for the overall song.
Yep.
Track 3, In the End, incredible track.
Big track. It is the In the End, or Nth E End, according to the album track listing, remix. Monster. We got Motion Man on here. We got Master Kurt on the remix. And this is just an excellent... This is one of the top songs of the album.
Mm-hmm.
This might be the top song of the album, but we're getting to another big one soon here. They change up the lyrics throughout most of the song.
Yeah,
we've
totally
got
different set of lyrics.
Mike is in his element here,
Mm.
exchanging bars. He's got a full verse at the beginning of this track.
Yeah, they start out, they take the same notes of the piano from In the End, the original In the End, and they make a totally different riff out of the same recording of piano notes. Just they add such a rhythmic element to it, and they're like, what if we flip it around? What if we chop it around? And they take the same piece of music, and it's just a different riff. It doesn't hit the same at all. The lyrics are totally different.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like listening to the same song but completely different. You know, it doesn't hit the same as the original In the End, and it's just a nice headbanger. Just a nice headbanger of a hip hop song. There's great pieces in here where they take the same content from In the End, and they just kind of flip it. All I know, time was just slipping away, and I watched it count down to the end of the day. Certainly, if not the exact original lyrics, but part of it. Watched me, and the words that I say, the echo of the clock rhyme in my veins. So just a different flip on that original content from the original song.
Yeah.
And Mike's verse there. We still got Chester on the chorus.
Chester sounds heavy on this. There's like another extra kind of tone to his voice on this. There's like an extra little spice on there. Motion Man sounds great. Chester sounds great. Yeah, like you were saying, they're flipping all the lines from the old one. It's basically In the End Part 2. Like they take it, they're like, what's the sequel? How do we take these same concepts but like flip them around? Like, how do we feel about this now? they got that stutter rhythm on Chester's vocals where he just sounds like some kind of psychedelic angel or something. I mean, the tonal quality of these sounds is just you know they just obsessed over this and just they're like, oh, it's not quite right. They got those like pew 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 pew, like all kinds of crazy like laser gun sounds, not even an instrument, but it sounds musical, and it's because they took that care and time to really dial it in and really they know exactly what layer to build this thing up. It's just amazing how they they pull all these new rhythms out of the same music.
Yeah, able to flip a lot of the original concepts. You still have your catchy lyrics, the "All I Know," and different pieces in the rap, and then in
The
the
rap
chorus
has
is
hooks
just,
in it.
yeah, just bars for days, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You certainly, if you've listened to this before, you would certainly know the different pieces. If you
Mhm.
gave it a quick listen, it'll all come back to you. It's just something you remember and sits with you. just great, just great.
I like it a lot more than the original in the end,
I actually do too. I actually like it a lot more than the original one a lot.
which is nuts.
Yeah.
I got to just give it an A plus. A plus, straight up and down.
This to me is an S. I think this would be, if you're looking at a piece of Linkin Park's that's a great collaboration and looking at what they can do in kind of the hip hop realm and also as far as a production side. I think this is, taking it out of the, almost rock element per se altogether.
Yeah.
This is a great
Yeah.
example of that. And to take such a big song that in the end was, and to completely flip it in a lot of aspects, lyrically, instrumentally, I think this is just a great piece. So to me, I would actually give this an S, the highest grade that you can in this body of work.
Amazing. Track 4 is called Shali, apparently. They got these little interlude things that are basically, they're like voicemails. I think it's just them kind of following up with some of the guest musicians and stuff like that, and
Yep.
just kind of like, hey, what up? Call me back, man. All right. Like, there's nothing special about them. They're just like kind of these goofy little interludes that we're not going to rank. They're fine. They work as little intros, and some of them do have some kind of cool little sounds in there. It's just
Yeah, this one's pretty much just a voicemail. Chali was part of the group Jurassic 5, and he's the feature in track 5 here. But there's not much other than a voicemail here that they added for the interlude of him calling back to be part of the
does
album.
he ever call him back? We'll never know.
I don't
Oh,
know.
yes, we will, because it's track 5, Forgotten.
Could have just emailed. Maybe he forgot to call back. We don't know. There was like AOL email at this time.
Oh, there was email.
Yeah.
There was email.
Yeah. So Forgotten here really throws back at completely different lyrics, but
Mhm.
some of the imagery from the original track holds over lyrically here as well. Trapped in greedy covenants, collapsing urban collapse, bullets that scar souls with dark holes. Get more than your car stole. Some hearts be blacker than charcoal, for real. So great imagery here, great verses. Charlie Tuna does a great job. Again, something memorable if you listen to it back 20 years ago, a verse that really, really sticks with you.
That verse might be the standout verse of the album right there. Like, just the way he raps, and the quality of his voice is so different, and his flow is so different. He just annihilates it, though. Like, it's like the perfect, just badass, like, just coming in and cleaning up the track.
It's a big contrast to Mike's voice, especially. He has a completely different tone to Mike, and it's a big contrast compared to other vocals that we have on this album.
Yeah, way different than the Chester stuff on here. I don't know if Chester sang at all on here. I mean, there's like the sample of him that kind of just loops and repeats and just distorted in different ways.
and that really plays back to almost tying it into Forgotten, not quite Forgotten, the original track, or Chester in that fact, and that we're throwing back to him and repeating the bars from the original track on repeat there.
But I don't think there's a guitar on this song, and I don't know if we've heard a guitar yet on the whole album.
I don't believe so.
We've heard a lot of scratching, a lot of stringed instruments, a lot of dubstep sounds. There's like a sample in the background of this that it's either like a hammered dulcimer or a harp or something like that, where it's a string instrument, but it's got that percussive element, and it sounds great. It's definitely a synth trying to sound like another instrument. I think it's some kind of dulcimer where they got just kind of this high pitched thing going on in the background that maybe normally you'd have like a lead guitar kind of doing that kind of thing, and I think they even do that more on the original Forgotten, but they're really staying away from guitar, but they're still making this stuff so heavy, and a lot of it's the vocal performance, and a lot of it is the sounds that they were able to call out of their synthesizers like this. But this bangs just as hard as the metal version of this song, and I mean, I didn't even realize as a kid that this wasn't metal anymore. Like, I don't even know what kind of music this is at this point.
Crossed over, yeah, into hip hop, especially on the verses here when we kind of drop out into that, just a little of the synth sound and a little bit of just kind of a punch from the is it just the bass and the
the
drums
bass
a little bit.
The synth bass on this is insane.
But it gets just in the verses to kind of let the lyricists go there. It's kind of simpler on the verses, I would say, and then they start to do some more things on the choruses, but they kind of let the verses breathe a little bit.
Yeah, I would say A-. I think it's great. I mean, we're really splitting hairs here. Like, you know,
Yeah, we are.
There's no like C, D, E. I mean, maybe we'll get into some of that stuff later on if there's like retreads or stuff where it's like, oh, they've already done that type of sound already. But so far, man, like, this is totally new, totally not the way that the original Forgotten sounded. Great feature, great remix, amazing sounds. Totally, just it's almost like horrorcore rap on the beat, but it's not. Like, there's such a different element to it that it really is kind of a unique style of music where it's some kind of electronic nightmare music, dude. Like, that's all I know how to say.
Yeah, and it does stay quite grimy, I would say, both with not grimy hardcore, but just with kind of dark, I would say, with the lyrics and with the instrumentation going along with that. I do like some of the visuals that the lyrics provide. I would stick with a solid A, I think.
Track 6, Pushing Me Away. There's a lot going on in here.
There is a lot going on in here. So we have lyrical changes. We have some lyrics staying the same. We got fading in and out.
Finally, some guitar.
Yeah, we do.
I think it might be the first guitar on the record, on the album here.
Pretty sure.
Comes crashing in. This song, it starts with like a really distorted drum sample. Just completely just wishy-washy, like swoopy sounds of a treated drum sample that I'm pretty sure is just like 2 bars long and just repeats throughout the whole thing, kind of really grounding it the way like a hip-hop track would be structured, where you've kind of got just a simple drum break that kind of repeats and repeats, and then they build on it from there, man. Like, that allows them to kind of paint this whole canvas with all kinds of instruments and non-instruments.
Sounds like a cello in the background, playing the same progression up and down, kind of mimicking the same pattern as the constant drums throughout.
Yeah, there's
kind of the same linear progression all the way through. Not a lot of variance in what the cello is playing.
The cello's holding it down, man. We've heard bass guitar. We've heard like throbbing wub 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 synth bass and all kinds of stuff, but this, I'm pretty sure this is mostly just a cello or a sample of a cello,
holding it down. But
it's filling out the whole bottom end and just extending through the whole track, and it just sounds great. Like, not a lot of bands necessarily have a cello player. You know, it's amazing that it keeps the pace with some of these other like insane nasty bass sounds that they're able to pull out of some of these on these other tracks and stuff like that. And it's like nope, we got the cello. It's holding it down for this song.
Yeah. Lyrically, we certainly have parts of the song that we can't even, understand. We open up with Mike and Steven Richards from Taproots, who has a brief vocal part in here as well, with a brief intro into the song. And there are cuts between the intro and actually where we first bring in the guitars for the first time, where we hear voices in the background. We can't make out what they're saying. Maybe that plays into the song title, Pushing Me Away, as in there's noise, there's no good communication. So that could certainly play, into the song title.
Yeah, they've got like a million layers of mic all talking at once like a crowd, and you can't understand what he's saying. And then there's like backwards vocals in here too, I'm pretty sure. They've got a bunch of weird, kind of unintelligible vocals on purpose at the beginning.
Yeah,
I'm even looking at it's totally backwards. I'm looking at the lyric sheet. They've got the lyrics on the lyric sheet here, and they're just backwards.
Yeah, that plays in great then.
Everything falls apart. Even the people who never frown will eventually break. That's what it is. And then backwards, it's so musical. A lot of bands do the backwards trick. Beatles invented it. Very first to do it on the song Rain. They got some backwards vocals in there. They thought it sounded cool, and they left it in. And it was a mistake. They put the tape on backwards, and it sounded like backwards talking, and they've done it ever since. Like all throughout the 60s and 70s, people would say, oh, if you play it backwards, it sounds like whatever, some message or something like that. But it just sounds musical. Like people found all kinds of ways to kind of add backwards vocals and backwards instrumentation, and you hear it all over pop music nowadays, where it's play the notes in reverse and just flip it around and figure out what's going on. It just sounds cool. It's just another trick in the bag at this point, but they use it to good effect here on Pushing Me Away. It's like a cacophony of voices. It's like, like you're walking into a crowd of people, like you're not supposed to know what they're saying. It kind of is more atmospheric and more kind of just bringing you into the insanity of what the emotions of the song are about.
Yeah. We've got a great new bridge as well. Reverse psychology is failing miserably. It's so hard to be left all alone. So that's a great memorable part that kind of sticks out, and it kind of calms, the instrumentation kind of calms down in there till I to roll into the bridge there before they bring Chester back in. So that's a great piece as well.
Yeah, I guess that's all Steven Richards. Very catchy bridge. I mean, yeah, he's pulling out a new melody out of the same setup here, and kind of just riffing with it. And then he ends up harmonizing with the original. I think it's the same recording of Chester. It kind of seems like it's just a sample of him, but Steven Richards is like, he's harmonizing with that and bringing out all these new harmonies and melodies from kind of the same, like again, from the same piece of music, and using it as a springboard to hit kind of, it's a new hook. Like that bridge, it breaks it down. That could have been the chorus.
Yeah, it could have been.
Like they don't repeat it. It's the bridge, but it's so catchy and stripped down that you just really, you pick up on it and remember that part anyway.
Yeah, finally coming together after, some of the reverse lyrics earlier in the track, and then kind of coming together towards the end.
I don't even know what to grade this stuff anymore, man. Like it all just seems, it's like it's all just a piece of the puzzle.
It is. I think they do a good job making the instrumentation and the lyrics feel washed out, and they're bringing it back together. I really like the vocals here by Steven Richards. I give this an A. I really like this track and what they're able to do with it. Yeah, I give this. Maybe that's a little high. I'll go A-. It's still not one of my favorite songs on the track, but I think it has some memorable parts. I certainly like the bridge that they collaborate on together, harmonize.
I'm gonna give it a B+. I'm not quite sure why. It just kind of feels like a really solid album track. It kind of just extends the feeling that we've got going on already. Great song. the atmospherics, just the way that they build up these layers, these walls of sound. You can hear the same these songs. You can hear the same song 1,000 times and really just kind of go to a different place. Like there's so many different pieces to focus in on, and just listening to how all the different instruments hit together and combine together and focusing on different instruments and different parts of the mix. Like this is dense music. This is dense stuff. It's no wonder they got 6 people in the band. Like it takes that many guys to come up with this many sounds, and then you throw the remixing guys on top of it. I mean, you know, you got a whole thing here.
A whole lot going on, especially in this track. So, Place for My Head.
Track 7.
Track 7. This is a roller coaster. Several different sections to this song.
Mm-hmm.
It actually starts out somewhat similar, lyrically at least, to the original track, and then breaks into, we break into a hip-hop verse, we break into a scream track, a scream mix almost.
It gets pretty screamy, yeah.
Then we have keys breaking it back down again. So, Place for My Head, one of the best songs on the whole album. But we open up with a Chester intro and a Mike verse.
Very similar to the original song.
Yep, absolutely.
And I was thinking like this, until it gets to like the bridge section, this song is probably the only one so far that could have possibly been a Hybrid Theory track.
Yeah.
Like it does have the metal and the hip hop and the electronic music and all that, and it is not necessarily a step backwards to Hybrid Theory, but it is more grounded in that kind of a band sound than some of the other stuff that we've had going on. But then they just break it all up into pieces anyway. By the time it's over, it's like, okay, yeah, this is not the same kind of music at all.
Like it's seated in the Hybrid Theory, and as it grows into a tree, it sprouts out in all different directions.
Yeah.
So where would you like to start on this particular track? Because I'm still stuck on the verse, which for the folks that may recall is by a guy named Baba Zumbi.
Baba Zumbi.
Yeah.
Yeah, he crushes it. I think there's some made up words in here, but other than that, just the way his flow hits on the beat is incredible. Totally different than Mike's flow. He just really has his own really kind of staccato, kind of slap style where he's just slapping the beat with his syllables.
Sick of you stressing, sick of you fessin', sick of you acting like I owe you some. Find her the place to feed your face. If you don't, we gon' bump, get it up. Get crunk.
Yeah, and again, he's like flipping the lines from the original. Like they sat him down in front of the original lyric sheet and they're like, okay, now, write the sequel, do part 2, like figure out what to say about this to kind of take it to the next level. And they do. And then Chester comes in on the bridge doing his scream thing. You try to take the best of me, go away. He's got some little extra kind of electronic sounds on his voice. I'm not really sure what that is. It's just kind of stuttery, distorting, kind of weird stuff that is added to his screaming to kind of make it fit with the electronic vibe that they've got going on so far. But it still crushes. It still sounds like, it's this dude just screaming at you. Like, it still sounds so primal and natural.
And you hear it over and over because they set it up for you to be expecting just maybe one scream like they did in the original. And they kind of surprise you. It drops out for a second there's a build up and a drop out, and then it cuts into him on a loop with him screaming at you over and over again. But like you said, it's very raw, but it's also controlled. It's not off pitch. It's just that great Chester right in his vocal range kind of.
He's like the most musical screamer in the game.
Yeah.
Like the most controlled, just musical way using the scream as a musical instrument and not getting carried away, but just really hitting you right where he needs to hit you with it.
So to hear it over and over, I think is more stimulating. Just a better way to hear it, to get hit with that over and over, and then to have the mix of everything else that's going on musically in the background. It's just very, very intense.
Yeah, they build it up so well, and then at the very end they just break it all back down. I think it's like just piano. Maybe there's some washy kind of samples going on as well,
Got the
but
keys back in there, which is just a great
always good.
great thing to have. But when you think of the progression we have from the beginning of the track, kind of a more familiar sound for Linkin Park, into a straight hip hop kind of deal, into what's really probably what most people really think dubstep. What we have with the chorus, or not, excuse me, not the chorus, the Chester loop on the scream, and then back down to the keys. Just a real roller coaster of sounds and different pieces to this song that just make it excellent.
Yeah, they were ahead of their time with taking like nasty, distorted sounds and really kind of getting the musicality back out of them and figuring out, like you said, with dubstep, where it's like they just take the nastiest sound possible and they're like, okay, that's the song. Like, how do we make that cool and appealing? They knock it out of the park on this song.
They do. This is an A+ for me, at least.
I think I gave the original Place for My Head an S.
I think you did.
I think I did, and I'm gonna go A-. We're
No.
really splitting hairs.
Okay.
But I gotta go A-.
right.
It's cool. It's very cool. It's a very special song. They got all the different moods in there. There are a couple better songs coming up though.
There are, but I think very highly of all this. I'm giving this a solid A+.
Track 8, Executioner Style.
Quick but painful.
Yeah.
All right. Besides being just the best song name ever,
Mm-hmm.
Executioner Style. Man. All right, so Black Thought on the vocals. We open up with Chester, again, not having to do anything on this because we're taking an old sample of him saying shut up over and over again. We'll also have that on the outro of this song.
This is the only original song that is not on Hybrid Theory.
And that was something when you go through it for the first time, whether it was now or back in 2002, that you were like, well, what song does this match up with from the original album? Where did this song come from? If you hadn't heard My December or High Voltage, might be a little different. But yeah, this is one of the ones you were like, well, where did this come from? And then you hear, Shut Up, which is from
Shut Up When I'm Talking to You.
Yeah.
By Linkin Park.
Yeah, from that. And quick song, 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's like one verse. He just gets in, gets out. There's like sample, verse, sample. Like it's not even, there's no chorus, there's no hook, there's no nothing. It's a sample and a verse.
But memorable lines, Executioner Style that cuts and blends like a syringe. We banging you in each of your limbs. Brutal
song.
Delivered well.
Loved it as a kid. I loved this song.
And there's just a couple guitar riffs and a couple samples and scratching. Not a whole lot going on musically besides just
a lot of samples happening.
Yeah.
This is like the most nu metal-y sounding one. This is almost like a Head PE song, or dare I say it, some kind of, not like Limp Bizkit, but it's definitely the most metal-y and the most kind of scratchy 90s hip-hop-y song. Like this could have fit in on any like kind of more of a normal sounding nu metal album, as opposed to some of this other synthesizer stuff and all the stuff that they got going on. This is kind of right in the vein. It reminds me of Head PE.
It's somewhere between if your friend said, hey, I'm going to freestyle, throw something on and wind the record, back so there's, scratch while I'm rapping and, have some vocals going in the back and just run the record back and forth. And it's shut up. And it's scratching in the back. And I'll just freestyle a verse over it. That's what this track is.
Yeah, but it totally works. I'm glad they included it. They must have just been inspired to like throw some stuff together and try it out with Black Thought and figure out what was going on. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't really match up with a song from Hybrid Theory. It's cool that there is one on here that's more of a, it's more organic than that. It's like it just kind of had to happen. Like this song just came out of the ether and they put it on the album.
I think this is an A+ because I love it.
I'm going to go S. I would put it on the mixtape.
Okay.
And it leads right in. We didn't mention, but a lot of the songs on this kind of all lead into each other. This one leads into High Voltage, which is perhaps my very favorite Linkin Park song. I always kind of consider this song is just so short. I always kind of considered it like an intro to High Voltage, essentially. Yeah, that alone, it's just kind of an extra verse for High Voltage, and that alone gives it an S.
And
for me.
High Voltage in its original form was also very much more of a hip hop track. So this is very much like a intro to that. I always thought as well. I can't quite give it an S because I wish we had more members of the group represented.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, certainly an A+ for me. A++.
Which brings us to track 9, High Voltage. I don't even know what to say about it. It's High Voltage. It's the Reanimation version of High Voltage. The better version, the best version.
Yep, for sure. First time you're hearing it, if you didn't. First hearing it for most Americans and folks in some other countries. Because it was, again, one of the 2 bonus tracks on with My December on Hybrid Theory. Definitely more in the hip-hop realm. So certainly fits more for this album than Hybrid Theory, I would argue. But just excellent track.
Excellent lyrics. The amount of imagery and references and just different situations and scenarios and objects. Like just all the different things
Just painting
that he says.
Yeah, just painting a picture for the listener, which is something I always appreciate. I think that's great lyricism to be able to do that. You know, even just the opening line, I've been digging into crates ever since I was living in space, before the rat race, before monkeys had human traits. That's a lot to think about right off the bat. The rest of that verse is all about biology, and it's just, we're digging into science right off the bat.
It's a whole nother level. Like, he's not talking about like street level stuff. He's talking about like space, intergalactic, different dimensions, gods and demons level stuff. But then he's putting that into the more traditional kind of hip hop lyrics. Yeah, I know there's a lot of guys who kind of do the spiritual miracle lyrical type of thing where they're talking about space and different dimensions and all that kind of thing, but this is like the song. This is like the song. It's never cheesy. You know, you always know what he's talking about, even if he's talking about outer space and all kinds of stuff. It's somehow still tangible and still accessible and still really kind of just cool sounding, without being cheesy or over the top with it.
Yeah, the chorus is more simple. It's, high voltage, and then it's either this unforgettable sound or bringing you up and taking you down. So it's high voltage, and then a little piece in the back. So almost like a little chant, I say this, the crowd says the second piece. I say this, the crowd says the second piece. So I say high voltage, and you say, almost that question response type deal. Not quite, but chorus, it's much more, sounds better, I think.
You got Pharoah Monch on here. He keeps up with Mike, definitely. He sounds great. Perfect feature. Fits right in with it.
Absolutely.
I love that the very, very last line in his verse is high voltage. Like, he brings it all the way back around. Really good writing. It takes a lot of forethought to kind of build your whole verse and all your bars around trying to aim at a certain place and then reverse engineering it back from there, so that it hits the high voltage right when the high voltage needs to hit. So perfect feature. He obviously really, kind of studied the track and was really careful about adding his thing to it. A lot of features nowadays are kind of just random. So there's features, other bands, other artists, but you can hear a feature every once in a while and you're like, they don't even know this song. Like, what does this have to do with anything? But this, it just fits. Like, this is the track. Like, he really kind of seals the deal, kind of wraps it all up. I gave it an S, dude. I've listened to this. This is, I don't know exactly what the singles were from Reanimation, but this should have been the #1 single from the album. This is like totally its own thing, its own style of music, different from Hybrid Theory, different from the other High Voltage even.
I give it an A. I love it. It's not one of my tippy top of the whole album, but I do give it a solid A.
Track 10, we got another little interlude, apparently called Riff Raff. Just a little. It's another voicemail. They're just like calling each other. You got 6 guys in the band. You got all these other guys jumping on the track. It's literally a voicemail. Like somebody must have just said like, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if we put those on the album?" It's not funny. It just sounds like a voicemail. I remember as a kid seeing the back of the CD and assuming that these were new songs.
Yep.
And they're not.
What a disappointment.
So that was a little disappointing. But now that I get that you kind of need an interlude to kind of break up the action.
Do ya?
You got one. Riff Raff. We are not rating them because they're not songs. All right, track 11 with is greater than you.
With who? With you? Who's greater?
The Chairman Han remix.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know who's the greater. I know that it's essentially equal to the original with you. I don't know if it's greater or less than.
Oh, buddy.
This is the one. It's so similar to the Hybrid Theory one. They really didn't add that much to it, really.
We have a new verse with Ace Yalone, but he's with you on this remix. It's a fine verse.
It's cool. You got Chester on the samples going, no, constantly. And then Ace Yalone's kind of fitting in around it. He's flipping some lines. It's cool. Like, he got the memo that all these other guests got where they gave him the lyric sheet and said, flip this around, tell us the second chapter of the story type of thing. So he's playing the game. He gets it. It works. It's a cool track. It's just so similar. I mean, even the original With You, there's all kinds of weird sounds and samples in that aren't even, this is way stripped back, but somehow still the same.
I don't know that his voice quite fits with Chester's. I don't know if they stripped it back so that they probably didn't, but it almost like they stripped it back so that it fit in a little better. It's just, I don't know. I don't like the sound of it. I don't like this song.
I'll give it a C.
Yeah, C. That's fine.
Or a C minus. They could have. They didn't really switch up the arrangement that much.
There's a little spaceship boop, a doo-doo-doo-doo-doo in a few places. I kind of like that, but yeah, there's not much else. The verse is fine.
Could have, yeah,
but
it's more like the B-side version of With You. It's not really the same. I mean, it fits. It fits the mood. It's cool that it leads into and out of some of these other tracks and stuff like that. But it's kind of it's not really With You part 2. It's like beta With You. It's like the flip side of With You. It's not really taking it to the next level as much as it's just like here's like an alternate mix.
To me, this is the one dud on this album.
Might be. So, what did you think of track 12, the intermission?
Some nice little keys, and then a little alien sound at the end to get us warmed up for track 13 there.
Yeah, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Another little interlude, 30-second interlude, basically.
30 seconds of pleasure.
Yeah, we're not going to rank it. It's fine. It's cool that it throws it back to the opening, kind of just bookending the album there. But yeah, so now we're going to do track 13. Track 13, Paper Cut, featuring Roscoe and Planet Asia. Tell me about it.
Oh, 2 big names in hip-hop. Just kidding. I'm not sure if I've ever heard of them.
Not quite familiar
before,
other than this. They do great on this.
So this remix of Paper Cut is more or less Paper Cut with a few changes at the beginning and end, with verses by Roscoe and Planet Asia, a couple rappers dropped in the middle, and they go back to back here in verse 2 and 3. Great verses, memorable verses. If you've heard the track before, certainly recognizable as Paper Cut. Listening to the beginning and the end of the track.
Yeah, it's a different arrangement, but it's a very similar. Everything's pretty similar. The lyrics are pretty similar to the original Paper Cut. It starts out sounding really hip hoppy, and then the guitar finally comes in, and it comes in hard, and it plays the riff. The annoying part is they've got this vocal sample of, I think it's Chester, kind of going like ah, but it just repeats and repeats through the whole song. It might have been cooler if it was not all the way throughout, but the raps are awesome. The whole production of it, it's like a crispier, dirtier version of Paper Cut. Definitely not the nu metal sound. It's more of like a alternative rock sound. Definitely super hip hoppy on some of the intro and verses and stuff like that, but they got like the banging guitars in there too. So, but yeah, not the nu metal version. It's definitely the reanimated version, but it's pretty similar.
Yeah. The hip hop verses expand on the paranoia that the song is talking about content wise. Again, as we've talked about earlier, artists brought into the song, lyrically they expanded on the concept of the song. They didn't go off in their own direction. So
Yeah.
now my back's against the wall. I'm taking the fall. Whenever I call, no one's responding at all, but I don't know who I can trust. They scream in my name. I need somebody to help me out of the flames. You know, and if I ripped off the skin, I'd probably find another person. There's nothing worse than trying to bring yourself up back from the dead. So certainly just playing on the same concepts of the original song. So great inclusion here. The rapping's great.
Mm-hmm.
Flow's great. It plays right on the guitar chords in Planet Asia, the third verse, right on cue with the guitar chords.
Super tight with the instrumentation, yeah.
Excellent play with that. So great drop in there. Just looping in some of the original guitar riffs, circling back to some of the older stuff at the beginning and the end, and just putting some of that stuff on a loop, which is not always the most exciting to me personally.
Yeah, we should mention, if we haven't said it enough already, how good the features are on this, how they really just take the song to the next level and kind of continue on the theme of the song without going off in their own direction or just freestyling or doing random stuff. It's all written to the concept, and it's really cool that they got everybody to kind of understand where they, what they were even going for with that. And sometimes it's hard to really narrow in on the same subject matter when you're co-writing on a verse or something like that, but all the features on this whole album really nail it.
Yeah, nothing's too far out of left field, so it's excellent lyrically when they're able to bring it all together as a add-on to the original.
I'll just give it a B. It's good. I give it a B. I think it's not quite as different as most of the other songs, but it's kind of just it feels like a remix. It doesn't feel like part 2. A lot of these are like the sequel. This one's just a remix. It's the non-nu metal version of the thing, and I think I gave the other Paper Cut an S. So I'll give this one a B.
I'll give this one an A-. The hip-hop verses are great. You can certainly tell that the original song is in there, but some of the loops they take of the original chords and some of the sounds they have, just not as pleasurable to listen to. So this is an A- for me.
So track 14, Runaway. Amazing song.
Yeah. Very similar to the original.
Very similar.
Dropped in a new verse, but again, very similar to the original. This version has a very drowning, is that a synth I hear in the back? The drowning synth and a drum.
I thought it was really washy sounding. That's in my notes too, that it's just like a really washed out. They've got the bubble sound effects at the beginning again, which they had in the original Runaway, which is cool. Yeah, I remember even as a kid thinking that out of every song on the album, this is the one that is the most similar to the original. And it is pretty similar, but re-listening to it again for the podcast, it just sounds, it's like the perfect version of Runaway. Like they really dialed in all the different sounds and all the different kind of just moving from one section of the song to another. They really dial it in and figure out how to like perfect the whole message of the song, basically.
I would agree with that. I think the kind of almost the wub or the instrumentation that they added in the back there, I don't know how you describe that sound exactly, but it kind of makes you feel like you're running away, you're lost, and there's just a void in front of you, and you're just kind of out lost in the void, and maybe the drum is representative of the pulsing in your head, and you're just, where am I going? I'm running away. You've got this pulsing in the back of your head, and you're out in the nothingness trying to get away.
Yeah. The drums are definitely super sampled on this. Like you can tell that the rhythms are super choppy and not the way that a normal drummer would be able to play them really at all. I didn't even really mention on Paper Cut, the last one we heard, it sounded like supernatural drums, like sounded like the attack and the rhythms and the choppiness of like that you would get from an actual dude playing a drum kit. So that stood out to me on the last song, and then on this song it really stood out to me how sampled it sounds and how blatant they are with the chops and just doing a crazy attack on the drums that you'd never be able to pull off as just, with a natural drum kit without samples and stuff like that. But the bridge section is intense. They've got a really thick bass tone that it syncs right up with the scratching. It's so heavy. Like, it's not metal or rock really at all, but it's one of the heaviest parts on the album with just bass guitar and scratching, and just how they sync right up. Just the insane attack of the bass guitar is really cool on that section, and then it leads into the guest verse at the very end there, which is pretty cool. There's like a 80s synthesizer thing. It's like a vocal synth where it's like a sample that's like
Yeah.
but they're playing it on a keyboard, so it's got that attack of the keyboard, and it just sounds awesome. It's like from a record from the 80s or something. It's like that type of vibe put together with all the darkness and grittiness and like the thick bass and the super like very hip hop production on the drums and stuff like that, but it all matches somehow, and it's just a crazy palette where they can bring something like that in, and it just expands on it and kind of just adds one more little detail to the whole thing where it's like, that's a crazy instrument.
Yeah, I think that was a great piece to add to have in the background there, and I think that the whole instrumentation kind of comes together with this, fits in with the vocals perfectly of Running Away, and just the, like I said, I think like a throb in the back of your head, running away, gotta get away, pressure, and I think this techie sound and this kind of the banging kind of adds to that, lines up with that lyrically.
Yeah, there's another part too. I think this is probably the last thing I'll mention, but there's where the guitar is like commenting on the vocals. It's like cutting in and out on like a lead guitar part that is like kind of the call and response to the vocal. And I think it's like the second verse that Chester sings, where it's got like these little lead guitar stabs. I just think that's a really cool way, because they're always about the call and response and having the two voices. So it's really cool that the other voice in this case is like a newly recorded kind of lead guitar part that really plays off of Chester's vocals this time.
Yeah, that's a great little nugget as well. So a couple cool little things that they've added to this piece.
Which is why I give it an S minus. S minus. I think if we're going on, would it make the ultimate Linkin Park mixtape? This would be the bonus track. It's there. It's not quite the most perfect, amazing, but there's so many just little nuggets in here and different instruments that they tried out while kind of just smoothing over the whole atmosphere they were able to get on the original Runaway. It's got to be an S, but I don't think it quite makes the 12 track or however many track mixtape. So I'm going to give it an S minus.
I give it a solid A. I like it a lot. It's not one of my favorites in the album. I do like the little nuggets, pieces you don't necessarily hear the first couple times around in the instrumentation, but just not my favorites overall, instrumentally.
So we got track 15, My December. I love this song.
I love this song too. Arranged very differently than the original.
Mm-hmm.
We've still got keys in the background. We've got some new sounds here as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they got rid of all the like random scratching and stuff like that was in the original. And instead of that, they've got like all these really cool programmed percussion samples. There's all these little tingly cymbal sounds. I think they're actually called tingle cups. They're like cymbals that are like as big around as the bottom of like a mug, like really tiny cymbals. I'm pretty sure that they got some of that going on in here. There's even like a xylophone type keys sound in the background. So it's cool. They really refined it. In the original, they've got kind of like random just scratch sound effects. And in this, they've got like really sophisticated drum samples that are like, it's like the same effect, but it's a lot more controlled and a lot more triggered, and it's hitting the beat right where they want it to. So it's like It makes the other one seem more like abstract, and this more kind of a refined version of the same picture, really.
Yeah, it's cool. It's just a little, I don't want to say Christmassy, but you have your bells, you have your piano,
Yeah, dang.
you have your sad Christmas song here.
All
You
about
do
snow.
Yep, all the snow. You bring in a female vocalist very briefly on a chorus piece here. And then you also have Chester, as you did in the original, harmonizing with himself as well again.
And then Kelly Alley, the vocal, and she harmonizes with herself too. So there's all kinds of harmonies going on, and it's really cool.
A really good sound as well. Yep.
Yeah, their voices blend a lot. I didn't even realize it was another vocalist when I was younger. I kind of thought it was like Chester with like a vocal effect or something, but yeah, they blend really well. There's like a really crazy synth on it too that it just somehow sounds like the sound of snow falling, which doesn't make a sound, but if it did, it would be the synth on here. And then they play that against a really natural sounding kind of piano sound. And then yeah, I think there's a little guitar as well, kind of like a little lead lick that just hits like one or two notes that kind of loops. But it's really kind of a collage between all the crazy percussion samples, which somehow doesn't make it aggressive at all. Like it's like a soft snowfall sound that they've made out of the different little crunchy sounding drum and cymbal loops, and then playing that against a beautiful synth tone that they came up with. I'll give it an S.
Yeah, it's very, very calming. I enjoy it a lot. And I also like on the chorus when not on the chorus, but in between verses, it almost sounds like you're drowning a little bit with the whisper tones. And I just wish that I didn't feel like there was something I missed. So
yeah.
It's kind of cool how they do that as well.
And Mike sings on this. He sings that part.
Yeah, so something a little different on that piece. I would give this, I really like the original My December more, actually.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I would give this a solid A, though.
Nice. I like this one a lot more. I like them both. I gave the other one an S. And no, I would not put both My Decembers and both High Voltages on the Greatest Hits mixtape. I would pick the Reanimation version. But if the Reanimation versions didn't exist, like My December and High Voltage would still be like two of the greatest songs in the catalog. They just really nailed it and took it to the next level with Reanimation. Yeah. So I think the Reanimation ones are better, but I think they're so different that they both deserve to exist. All 4 tracks get an S, but it is cheating a little bit because I would not double dip on the actual Greatest Hits mixtape.
It's not cheating. They can all get the same grade, but not make the album. I just can't give it the good track, but I like the other one just touch better.
Track 16, we got another voicemail, literally a voicemail. They're just saying like, "Hey, call me back, dude. Okay, bye." I don't know why it needed to be a whole track on the album. It could have been an intro or whatever, but that's the way it is. And
just a little breather.
We're not going to rank the interludes. All right. Track 17, By Myself. Don't know if I have a ton to say about this one. I don't like it as much as the original By Myself. I think the whole point of By Myself is that it's just the most blistering, needly, just screeching over the top song, which they perfected on the original By Myself. This to me is just kind of like more of a watered down version,
more digital.
Yeah, way more digital on purpose, but I think it kind of defeats the purpose of what the song's really about. It's cool that they sample the screams of Chester from the original and kind of digitize them and do some different stuff with them. And but there's something about the synth on it. It just makes it way more similar to a song like Runaway, where you've got those arpeggios on the synth going on. And I just think that that's going in the wrong direction. They should have just made the most distorted, just insane, you can't even listen to it. Like, that's what I would have done with By Myself. Like, just crank up the gain, crank up everything. But they just went the other way with it and made more of kind of a Runaway-esque sound with this one, I think.
Yeah, it almost seems too tame for what I would expect for something like this. I'd hope for more from the guitars. I do like the new chorus. Looks like might be the only new piece on the whole album that Chester contribute to in a new aspect. The only thing that might be a new piece to this whole album.
Yeah, it sounds like he's actually singing to the new track as opposed to just sampling him from the old track. I think Mike sounds like it's original too. Like, I know some of this stuff is samples of him, some of it, a lot of his new verses on this are new, obviously, but yeah, this one does. The vocals do sound a lot fresher.
Even the outro, some of the screaming vocals just don't hit the same. Not the same. Not as powerful.
It's
as
not
they could
a
be.
primal thing
No.
if it's all sampled to heck. I mean, the whole point of the other one is that it's just Chester screaming his head off, and it's like, oh, well, that's a computer. That's not him at all. So,
And it ends pretty calmly. Kind of drowns out. So
I'll give it a C. I think they definitely tried something. I think it was cool to chop up the screams and sample it back out and do rhythmic stuff with it like that. I'll give it a C. That's what it deserves, I think.
I'll give it a C+.
Track 18, Mr. Han.
Trying to cure our itches again.
And he does. He scratches the itch, dude. This is like the layers that he achieves and the different rhythms and sub-rhythms that he pulls off and the way that it all hits and grinds together is amazing. It's an amazing performance on a musical instrument that just happens to be turntables. His samples are great. The way he scratches and backspins them is amazing. You can tell it's all being done live with actual vinyl or electronic vinyl or however he did it, but he's playing the turntable. It's not all chopped up on the computer. Like, this is a live performance of this dude mixing samples, and he's got to be one of the best in the world. Like, this is nuts. This whole thing, I think, is incredible.
Yeah. Unlike a lot of tracks, like you said, you can hear that this is live, not all samples chopped together, and it sounds wonderful. You still have some of the fun little vocal samples scattered throughout at the beginning and the end as well.
Mm-hmm. But let's try something else. It's like a speak and spell or something, but it's something they decided to sample. And it's like tribal vocal samples too, like people going, oh, like up on the hillside type of thing. Like, I don't know if it's them as a band making those samples or if it's actually like from a piece of folk music or something like that, but it just sounds like kind of like just a tribal echoing from the hillside type of sound.
Put you in the space of like a cool hipster party. Someone spinning, you're all dancing. Put you in that cool headspace.
I would dance to it. You can dance to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're just sitting here listening to it, folks. I mean, it's really awesome. I'm gonna give it an A+.
Yeah, I will as well.
It's super experimental, but he pulls it off, man. It's like if you saw this at like a talent show of like jugglers and sword swallowers and blah blah blah, and then this was an act, like this holds up among that. Like, not even holds up among other songs and pieces of music, but it's like just the performance of the turntables on this in and of itself would be, it's just amazing to see and hear. I mean, but you can hear it in your brain. You see it.
Yes, I can absolutely visualize it.
Track 19, One Step Closer. This is like the Vamp live version. It's not a live version, but it's like, this is what you would do at a live show where if you were like, we got to play the same riff for 10 minutes here and keep people bumping and just throbbing with the same. I think it's cool. I like it when it's like the extended cut, basically, of One Step Closer, where it's like they do everything they can, build up as slowly as they can, just keep the intensity going. It's One Step Closer Vamp version.
Yeah, so not quite as heavy hitting as the original for sure.
Yeah, I think that's true.
We do add Korn vocalist Jonathan Davis in for the third verse, as well as the bridge and the chorus at the end.
Saving some of the bigger names for last. Some of the guys on this album are not nearly as famous as Linkin Park. Some of them are, but it's cool that they have Jonathan Davis from Korn on track 19, and then track 20 coming up. They got Aaron Lewis from Stained, and I just feel like those guys were really kind of contemporaries of Linkin Park, kind of saw eye to eye with them as in terms of sales and just influence and stuff like that. So it's cool that they kind of saved the best for last in terms of some of these big hitting rock names as the co-vocalists on this stuff. He does great.
Yep, yep. Um, Korn's careers has just started a few years before this album had started, and Stain's 3 years before, I believe. And Break the Cycle came out 1 year prior to this. So also all three bands right just in their primes here.
Yeah, we're still
I'm
hearing
not a
the
huge
first.
fan of this song. I would give it a C plus. Just kind of drones on after a while.
I'll give it a B plus. I think it's cool. I like when there's like an extended cut of a song that just adds like 5 minutes of vamping, and if you like the riff, you like the riff. So you
That's
gotta
true.
play it 1,000 times in a row. So, not amazing. It is what it is. A B plus. So we made it all the way to track 20, Crawling. You get that violin intro that we've heard teased at least twice so far on the album, kind of finally coming full circle and leading into Crawling.
And we get layers. We get what's probably, certainly machine, not live, but full instrumentation. We get violins, cellos, probably basses in there. So a full orchestra. If you were performing it live, it'd be probably a full orchestra. And you get Aaron Lewis of Stained very briefly in the beginning, but his recognizable vocals and just the way he hits the note for Crawling in My Skin at the very, very beginning of the track before we kind of dip into more of the normal vocals of the closer to the original track.
You got some Chester. You got what sounds like Chester, newly recorded Chester, kind of harmonizing. You got Aaron Lewis harmonizing with Chester. It's cool. This, again, is kind of the vamp version. This is kind of like, how far can we take Crawling? How far can we take the same riff? How much can we just keep building on the same riff? It's pretty cool. It's a really good ending. I like that kind of the notes of Crawling is like the theme to the whole album, where it's the intro and then this as the outro, and kind of just crawling through the whole album, essentially, just crawling its way through. They do sample the original guitar stuff, and they got like the most distorted, trashiest drum samples on the whole thing, kind of to offset it from the orchestral stuff. You do have scratching and stuff like that on here as well, kind of scratching in little synth stabs that sound like they're coming from the turntables. Really droney. This is like some kind of drone music. It sounds more kind of like Eastern music or Indian music, where you're hitting all the notes in between and just kind of droning on the same kind of just building in intensity. And I think it works. It's like definitely what they were going for, was kind of the drone crawling, and they picked the right song to do it too. And it's cool that it's that drone that kind of takes you through the whole album.
I like keeping the orchestral part throughout the entire song. It almost brings an inevitable doom to the track, the crawling, something's in my, head almost. And, of course, the interlude and towards the end of the song, it's Without a Sense of Confidence, repeated over and over lyrically. I'm convinced that's just too much pressure to take. And I think just kind of keeping it as a little bit calmer track, certainly muted, I think instrumentally, brings this inevitable kind of doom to this creeping, crawling feeling.
Great song. I don't remember what I gave the other Crawling. I'll give this an A. This is an A. It had to be on the album. It had to be like this. It had to have kind of the drone music influence in there, and they knew exactly what they were going for, and they nailed it. I'll give it an A.
This to me is an A+. I wish Aaron Lewis was in it a little more. I think they could have interwoven his voice in a little bit more. And I think that they even could have dialed back some of the original instrumentation a little bit more and made it sort of more of a dreadful song. Because I kind of like that it's almost a little bit creepy in different parts. But A+ for me.
That is about it for the album. We are going to do the bonus track. We got another bonus remix of By Myself. This time it's spelled By Myself. You're going to have to, that's a spelling pun. You can't really hear the difference in there, but it's B-U-Y, By Myself. Marilyn Manson helped do that. He made the remix, so that's incredible.
Seems like he would have been a big pull for them early in this career, even with the success of Hybrid Theory.
Yeah, you'd think. I mean, he was definitely still huge at that time, as far as I remember. It does seem. I feel like he came out a little bit earlier, but it's got to be kind of probably the biggest household name on here for any of the features and remixes. Marilyn Manson's got to be. I mean, my grandma knows who Marilyn Manson is, so and she doesn't know who Aaron Lewis is. So very cool. Let's find out how cool the song is. So yeah, the bonus track, By Myself. The Marilyn Manson version of By Myself. I already had problems with the other remix of By Myself. This it's weird. It's like an industrial version. It sounds really similar. It's honestly not that different. You can tell it's a Marilyn Manson song.
Yeah.
It just has his style of synths and atmospherics and stuff like that. But it's really not different enough and not distorted enough. He really goes for like a melodic industrial thing, which is what he does. I mean, that's what it had to be, but I would have I really think they should have gone the other direction and just cranked this one up and just done like the blistering version.
Yeah. Sounds exactly like if Marilyn Manson worked on a Linkin Park song. Just a marching, sounds like a march with Linkin Park.
Yeah, he does do a lot of marching type stuff.
Doesn't quite go together, and if they dialed it in a couple different directions, it would have sounded better. I just not quite feeling this. I do like that they changed a few little lyrics towards the end. They had a little bit different bridge, made it a little eerier. But I'm just not really feeling this track as much.
Probably the third best By Myself.
Ugh, that's tough. All by itself in third place.
Dang, it makes sense that this is the one that they left off. And left for the kind of the bonus fans. So that's it. We went all the way through Reanimation, every track, including the bonus track. I just love this album. We were kind of harsh on some of the songs towards the end. I mean, you're comparing it to Hybrid Theory, which is another incredible piece of work. I will always go back to Reanimation and just the journey it takes you on and the atmosphere that it's able to create and just sheer number of layers. Like there are not very many records that have just this many layers of sounds to really pour over and kind of imagine all the different scenarios that they're putting together. So
yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
It stands alone even from Linkin Park's discography and certainly among the stuff that was coming out at the time. I mean, I feel like this is miles ahead of a lot of the other nu metal stuff that's a lot more repetitive and a lot more primal, but just not as thought out as this. Like every note of this was calculated and every word, and you can tell it's just a crafted. I mean, they had 2 shots at it. They got to make the same album twice, so that helped. But even then, even that being said, it's just the song craft and the production craft and just crafting all the different sounds. It just stands apart. Like it's its own genre. Like they made up a genre on Hybrid Theory, and I think they made up another genre on Reanimation.
Yeah, and to go from to move more hip hop on this album, and then even to dip more rock a little bit towards the end, and just spread out. This is more of their hip hop album, almost, if you will. I would consider it, especially with the hip hop verses that you have. But
all the features, yeah.
Still, in this early in their career, to spread their palette like this and to dip into so many different levels was just really cool to see.
Nobody did a remix album like this. I mean, there are some pop artists, now that I think of it, that have done such a thing where they've kind of released the same album twice as a remix, but you don't really see that in rock, and you don't even really see that in hip hop as much. So just an awesome idea to do a remix album. Probably a risky move, honestly. I mean, I don't really know what the history of what the label thought of this album or whatever. I mean, I know it was like a hit. Probably not quite as big as Hybrid Theory, but just the fact that they're like, yeah, it's the same songs but different, and trust us, like it's worth it. It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be even better than the other one. So I think is a risk to do that so early in the career. Like if they had done it as like their 5th album is a remix of, I mean, nobody would have cared, but like this had to work and it had to hit, and it totally works. They took the risk and they nailed it.
And to not have very many original vocals from your lead vocalist in Chester, when almost the whole thing is re-recordings, samples from the original album, to have very little original material from Chester, who was one of the big names.
And, most people are hearing the vocals and listening to the vocals first anyway. So, yeah, that's a good point. That just a further risk. I mean, that's what they were going for. It was a remix album, but it had to work, and it did.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I don't know what else to say.
I don't know either.
That brings us to the end of another amazing Linkin Park release here on Season 1 of POLYMUSE.
We hope you enjoyed your time. Follow us at POLYMUSE Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
And check out polymusepodcast.com for the running tier list of how the songs are ranking as we go through this discography with you all. I hope to see you next week with another album.
Bye-bye.